Welcome back to another episode on the podcast. We are talking about October's transits on this episode, and it's kind of wild that it's already October in 2025. This year has simultaneously felt like it's gone so fast and also like forever. It's been like astrologically, it's like transit after transit after transit, like hit after hit after hit. It's been so intense and it's been such a wild ride. Before we get into it, though, I just want to, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. If you have gained any value over the podcast or from the podcast over the last, oh my gosh, it's been like 6 years, which is actually crazy. I started this podcast, I believe, in August, or no, I started this podcast July 2019, right before everything happened. It was really just a space for me to come and sort of be my online journal and heal that part of myself that had held this massive fear about being seen, had this massive wounding around connection, but like deeply wanted that. So it's been this really beautiful space. So if you're here, if you've been here from the beginning, if you're, this is the first time you're listening to it, or wherever you're at in the journey of, this podcast, I, first of all, just want to thank you for spending your time and listening to me. And yeah, just like welcoming you to this space if you're new. If you find value out of this, share with a friend. It's so, so helpful just to get the word out, to help it grow so I can continue to come here and make these episodes. Leave a review, leave a comment, DM me on Instagram, all of the ways. Spotify, it's literally just that 5 stars. You can just click it, and it really does go a long way. So just so much gratitude for you for being here. Astro Design School is beginning October 14th is when we are officially is our start date. This is a 6-month journey designed to really get you out of your head and really embody these systems, this, human design, astrology that we talk about here, spirituality, all of these tools that we discuss in the podcast. It's really, I think sometimes we can make this such a mental game. And I know I did that for years of like trying to understand everything. And kind of my journey has been in really just like embodiment and coming into my body and trusting myself. And, especially with my human design authority. And it's really, last week we talked about those 6 codes for embodiment, 6 embodiment codes. And that's really what it's about, right? It's coming into your system, it's trusting yourself, it's coming into your authority. It's really just remembering, right, who you are and beginning to decondition and unhook. And this is a huge theme inside the Inner Mother Collective, which is our monthly membership space. And it's about not only just unhooking from the narratives, the outdated narratives that no longer work for us. It is about resourcing each other. It is about sharing our gifts or just coming in to receive whatever you really feel like. It's more than a membership. It is a collective, right? And we're doing something so different and so new that it's really, really exciting. So everything you need to know is down in the show notes, all the links, all the stuff. Follow me on Instagram at Rochelle.Christian, ROCHELLE.CHRISTIANE. You can head over to YouTube and watch the episodes if you prefer YouTube. And then TikTok, Rochelle Christian as well, Rochelle.Christian. And I share mostly astrology stuff over there. Weekly Sunday card pulls. We do card pulls according to the astrology, but all the things and all the ways that you can connect with me are down below. And so we're just going to dive into the astrology of October. I know the last couple weeks or so have felt like a release, like a breath, like we can kind of like take in that deep breath after, the eclipse season, after the fall equinox. We're pretty much out of the energy of it. We are in the energy. We have a few transits from last week, Mars square Pluto, which I felt, I wouldn't say intensely, but I've definitely felt some irritation, some frustration that's definitely rooted to something deeper, which makes sense with Pluto, right? Because Pluto is like that kind of underbelly, what is the term? Underbelly of the beast. But it's just sort of like the things that have been festering that we don't necessarily always see, right? We don't necessarily consciously, we're not aware of, but it's like the things that we've kind of maybe shoved down and just kind of let go that are asking for our attention. Because again, Pluto is a slow moving planet. So these things just kind of bubble up until it becomes uncomfortable. So we have to see them. We have to face them. So that's sort of that energy. And I've definitely been feeling that in a lot of ways, especially, a lot of family stuff has been coming up for me. And for me, I have Pluto in Scorpio and it's in my 4th house. And the transiting Pluto is square to my natal Pluto. So if you are a Pluto in Scorpio baby, these things are going to be coming up because over the next 20 years, Pluto will be squaring your natal Pluto at some point. And so for me, again, being in the place of home, like a lot of that stuff is coming up. I've had some back pain for, I think, since May. And I am very, very fortunate and very blessed and very grateful to live in a body that really feels great. And so this sort of like discomfort in my back is new to me. I'm not one to have, again, like I said, fortunately, I'm not one to suffer from chronic pain of any sort. And so it's actually been a little bit challenging, and I'm trying to be very particular about my words and energy that I'm bringing to it. But at the same time, you can't ignore when something hurts, whether it's physically, spiritually, emotionally. We can't bypass that. And so just trying to figure out what it is. I'm always of the mind. I believe that it's physical pain is a manifestation of something internal. And a lot of what has been coming up lately, through eclipse season, through this Mars square Pluto, through, again, Pluto square my natal Pluto, like all these things that are coming up, a lot of family things, I guess, things that maybe you kind of just sweep under the rug and ignore. Even with my kids, I think our kids are our greatest mirror, and our kids are the deepest spiritual work we will do. And so even with that, like seeing these things that are mirrored through my children, that is really reminding me that my past, my stories, my narratives do not have to become theirs. And so in those moments where I feel triggered by something they've done, they've said, they've been disrespectful or whatever, again, my narrative doesn't have to become theirs. So there's a way to approach it that's not super reactionary. And I think that with this Mars square Pluto and some of the other transits that are coming up, it's really a matter of not reacting, or rather remembering that we can control our reaction to things. We can control what we say, how we approach situations. We can't control a whole lot in life, but we can control that. We can control the way we show up. We can control the way that we react. We can control the words that we say. And so just really remembering that, especially this week, as I'm having to do something I really like, if it didn't have to do with my kids, this would be an absolute hell no. It would be a fuck no from me, like beyond hell no. But I'm always one about honoring your intuition, honoring your body. And I know that this is a no for me, but I also know it is beyond me, and, always prioritizing the kids. So I'm doing something that I really don't want to do. And I was sitting there in meditation last night, and I noticed my mind's like ruminating on all of the worst case scenarios. And so I just had to stop myself mid meditation and just remind myself that it doesn't have to turn out like that. It doesn't have to look like that. I am under no obligation to say yes to something I don't want to say yes to. I'm under no obligation to appease someone. The past version of me was a huge people pleaser. I would say yes, I would go along. That freeze fawn response is my trauma response. That's what I do. I kind of shut down, and I'm just like, that people pleasing, that has always been the thing that's kept me safe. And also I know that I am safe now. I'm safe to be myself. I'm safe to show up the way I want to show up. I can take a pause. I don't have to respond to things immediately. I've really been doing a lot of work with my emotional authority and my undefined root, which always I feel the pressure of having to respond to something now, or give you an answer now, or do something now. And there's no need to do that. I can say, hey, I need a minute. I'll think about it. Let me get back to you. Right? Like I always tell my kids, always, no is a complete sentence. No, period. That's it. We don't need the explanation. Now, out of respect, we can give people an explanation, but we don't need to give people an explanation if we don't want to, right? No is a complete sentence. Obviously, always the caveat is that you're doing it with pure intentions, that you're coming from a place of love and understanding and compassion. You're not trying to manipulate or harm somebody else. But with all of that said, I just was really reminded this morning the power of being embodied, of the nervous system work. Like, again, the 6 codes, right? The 6 embodiment codes. I'm still like figure out what I want to call them. It's originally the 6 codes for authentic alignment, but then I like the embodiment piece. So I think we're going with the six embodiment codes. I like that. The 6 embodiment codes. I'm also creating a PDF that should be available hopefully by the time this podcast goes out. If it is available, I will link it down below, just going over the 6 codes. And then you'll have some journaling space, practice space. But the first one is nervous system regulation. So whatever you're going through, whatever you're meeting in whatever space that you're in, really pulling on those. And again, this is what works for me. So always use discernment, see what works for you, what you want to implement. This is my specific practice. This is what I have found to work for me. I'm kind of one of those bigger go home type of people. And if I'm not going big, then I tend to lose interest. And so for me, I'm meditating every morning. I'm meditating every single evening. So that's my two big chunks of 20 minutes and 20 minutes. And then every day after the gym, when I'm in the sauna, I drop in for 3 minutes to reset myself, to kind of regulate myself, and just to like do some energetic hygiene, right? From being around people and having to be around people a lot. And so that's sort of like my space. But again, that nervous system regulation is absolute key. And so when it makes it easier then when you're confronting situations or places or people or whatever it is that would activate you in the past, that then you can dip into that nervous system regulation tool. And I already know what practice I'm going to be doing before I have to engage in this specific situation. But also, instead of ruminating or instead of focusing on, oh my gosh, this is going to happen, or what if this happens, or what if they act like that, or what if they say that, or what, right? Like all that bullshit. Instead, I can just be like, you know what? It's going to be an easy breezy hour. It's going to be over with before you know it. And I'm going to stay in my integrity. I'm going to stay authentic and everybody's going to be happy. And we're going to go home and move on and it's fine. I've also had two situations, and I promise we're going to get into the astrology in just a minute. But I've had two situations recently that have reflected, I think, because at the time I was trying to figure out what exactly the lesson was or what it was reflecting for me. But what I've come to the conclusion was it's really just showing me the work that I've done, because there were two situations that have been brought up, and I'm not going to get into them, but two different people reflected on their end, a perception that was not my story. So their story was not my story, but they sort of projected their story onto me. And a past version of me probably would have made myself smaller to meet them or to match their story, to play into that narrative. But this version of me I wasn't triggered. Like I thought about it for a minute and I was like, that's interesting that that's coming up, because that's not at all the way that I intended that to come across, because I was actually really neutral about it in both situations. And also not projecting any sort of judgment back, because I think an egoic part of me would have liked to have said something along the lines of, I'm not giving that focused attention, and maybe that's my own judgment of like worrying that would come across being like, I'm better than you. I'm not thinking about it that way. But also understanding and seeing that narrative, their narrative, does not have to be mine. And that's fine. There were two situations that I was not giving any energy to. And then they came to me and kind of reflected that I was being insensitive, or I was being, I don't know, whatever. And that might be the perception, because I have always in the past traditionally been very reactionary, very emotional, very people pleasy. And so then when you stop being those things and you come into your own, people might think that you're cold because you're no longer catering to their needs. And so I think it's part of the process, and that's okay. But anyway, that being said, I think that a lot of, again, October is going to be kind of a big month astrologically. Again, there's, some things going on. And like I said, we've had the last, I don't know, week or so to just sort of be in our own energy, to decompress, to reflect. And I feel like for me in that reflection process, I've had a lot of anger and frustration come up, and a little bit of defeat is kind of been coming up of this, just like I'm putting in the work and I'm not necessarily seeing anything yet. And I've been reading this book on esoteric astrology. And one of the things I should always just have my books around me all the time, because I always want to like pull from them and read these little quotes. But it was something along the lines of, when we are actually, I know exactly where I can find it. So if you're watching YouTube, I apologize. I'm going to go find it. If you're on the podcast, this is going to be cut out. But it was this saying. No, actually, I don't know. That's what it was. No, okay. I promise you, I'm going to find it right now. It was this saying. Okay, this is what the book said. Ask and ye shall receive. Knock and the door shall be open unto you. This is the law of magnetic attraction in action. But to receive a great gift, you must be in a place within yourself that permits reception. This can only be accomplished through the sometimes painful process of elimination, which is accelerated through spiritual aspiration and meditation. meditation, affirmation, visualization, right diet, etc. So basically what this is saying that, right, that ask and ye shall receive, knock and the door shall be open unto you. This law of magnetic attraction, right? To receive a gift, to receive what we're asking for, ask and ye shall receive. When we are asking for something, we have to be in the right space, the right spiritual space, the right mind, the right frame of the right body, we have to like release the things that are holding us back. We have to be in the right space, right? To accept them. Because if we are not in the right space, if we are not regulating ourselves, if we're not meditating, if we're not in the right space to receive these, A, we won't even see them, or B, we're going to be so dysregulated that we're not going to know what to do with it, right? It's really just asking for something and acknowledging and being able to hold it when it comes to you. Because if we're not able to hold it when it comes to us, it's just going to slip through. And it's not to say it's not going to come again. But I think a lot of times in those situations, when we're asking for something, when we receive it, we don't recognize that we've received the thing that we've asked for because we're not in the right space. And so what I feel like I've been in this phase of getting right with my body, getting right with my mind, meditating. I mean, with the exception of my back, which I'm figuring out, but meditating twice a day, moving my body, eating right, being in the right spiritual practice, like praying every day at night after my meditation, I pray for a couple minutes. And so all of these practices are then eliminating things from my life so that I can be in a place to receive and hold the things that I'm asking for. But there's always that period, that gap where you're sort of purifying yourself, right? Which is what Virgo season was teaching us, where you're sort of purifying yourself to get into the space to be able to hold them. And so I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, am I being complacent or am I uncomfortable with peace? Because I feel really peaceful in my life right now. I feel there are things that are low key stressing me out, but they're not like, as I'm talking about them now, I can feel it in my body. But generally, I feel good. Like I feel happy. I feel love. I feel at peace. I feel all these things that I'm not normally. I'm so normal. I'm so used to the chaos, the emotions, the highly charged, whatever, the frustration, the disappointment, like all these things. And so it's kind of like now that I'm not feeling that, am I being complacent or am I just not used to this level of ease and peace? Right. And so I was thinking about that the other day, and then I came across that in that book. And I was like, that's what it is. It's this part of my journey and my process where I'm allowing myself to be able to hold the things that I'm asking for, to be able to recognize when they're being offered to me, to come into that space and just doing the work on myself and being my authentic self and holding the space for just me. Right. And whatever that means. And so anyway, that's kind of what I've been going through. So, okay, let's get into the astrology. So October 1st, which this episode is coming out on, is it coming out on the 1st? What is today? I don't even know. I'm recording this 31. Okay. This episode is coming out on the 2nd. So on the 1st, so yesterday, Mercury in Libra is square Jupiter in Cancer. And this is really just like expanding us around relationships, around our home, around our inner world, of course, our mind, because Mercury is our mind, right? It's challenging the way that maybe we've always perceived something, especially with Uranus retrograde in Gemini. It's challenging the way that we've always seen. It's changing the way that we see things. It's changing our perception. But this is really asking us, like, what do we need to see around our relationships? What do we want to expand on? What are we thinking differently? Maybe we want to redefine for ourselves. There's something around that sort of area. And of course, for you specifically, looking where Libra and Cancer is in your specific chart to understand how this really could apply for you. For me, Libra is in my 3rd house, Cancer is in my 12th house. So this is really about communication, right? This is surrendering and communicating. And whether that's writing or journaling or podcasting, right? Like social media, whatever, like these are the themes that would come up. So identifying where these are for you. And of course, with any transit, when we're speaking about the transits, this is a general overview of what it could look like. But of course, it's so individualized to you in your chart and what that looks like for you. On October 4th, Venus is opposite the North Node and it's conjunct the South Node. So this is really asking you, like, what values are aligned? What values need to be reassessed? What habits can you put into place? What routines can you put into place to support new habits? And being opposite the North Node we can find it a little bit uncomfortable, right? Because the North Node is where we're going versus where we find comfort. So, specifically when it comes to Venus, what do we find pleasurable, and where are we taking that pleasure and moving into escapism versus being really practical? Because drinking and getting drunk might feel good for you, but is that actually supporting you? Or are you escaping the reality or the truth or whatever the thing is underneath the like, do you value that? Right. So it's kind of like asking those things. Or are you like more leaning into that practical? Right. So again, like assessing what values and what routines and what routines and habits support our values in the way of life that we want to embody. And again, looking where these are in your chart. Excuse me. October 6th, Mercury moves into Scorpio, and then we have our full moon in Aries. So the full moon in Aries is happening at 10:47 p.m. It's 14 degrees of Aries, and it's happening at gate 21. Now, full moons are a time for release, for shedding. Again, full moon is when we can see clearly, things are illuminated. There's really like there's really like nothing going on specifically with the moon itself. Like it's not aspecting anything. But oh, I have this written down in my other journal. Let me pull it up real quick. So, again, there's not a whole lot going on specifically with this moon, but when we look at Mars is in Scorpio, and Mars is, let me pull it up real quick. Now I've got the new moon in here. We want to look at the full moon at 10. What time did I say it was? Oh my gosh. I normally would have had this better prepared. Again, if you're YouTube, bear with me. If you're on the podcast, it will be cut out. 10:47 p.m. 10:47 p.m. Okay. So Mars is in Scorpio. We have passed the square to Pluto. That's behind us because technically it's a wide, it would be kind of a wide square. And it is an it is a wide conjunction with Mercury because Mercury is at 0 degrees. Again, Mercury just moved into Scorpio. So it's at 0 degrees during this time, a wide conjunction. And Mercury at 0 degrees of Scorpio is square to Pluto, which is intensifying things, which we'll get into. It's direct the next day. But again, Mars being the ruler of Aries, just being and co-ruler of Aries and Scorpio, being here is, where are we falling into that more sort of reactionary space? Can we pause? Can we breathe? Can we be more mindful of the words that we're saying, especially with Mercury kind of being loosely involved if you're looking at a 10-degree orb? And Scorpio, I talked about it last week. Mars in Aries is more sort of that like toddler, I want what I want and I'm going to do the things to get it. Whereas Mars in Scorpio is a little bit more intentional with the way it goes about things because Scorpio is a little bit more intentional. Scorpio is a little bit more secretive, manipulative. We're going to use that word a little bit more, flying under it's like it watches things to see how people are going to act. My son has a Scorpio rising and Mars on his ascendant. And I'm telling you, I always see this because and gate 21 for him is in his unconscious sun. And that's what this one is. So I know this is going to be kind of a big one for him. But he'll ask the same question like 7 times to see if my answer has changed, to see if I'm trying to manipulate him or lie to him or like get one over on him or something, right? And I tell over the weekend I got annoyed. I was like, I already answered this multiple times. Like, are you trying to like catch me in a lie? Like, I'm not going to change my answer. But it is this trust thing that Scorpio has. The lesson of Scorpio is to learn to trust. And that can be really challenging, right? To learn to trust others, because once the trust has been broken, and this is why, specifically with my son, but this is why I always come back and explain things to my kids. Like over the weekend, my daughter had homecoming. So she and I went out, got her nails done. I took her and her friends out for dinner. We got her a dress and all these different things, right? And so my son was like, can you and I, like, once we drop them off, can he and I go do something like get ice cream or whatever? First of all, when we got our nails done, he had like 7 lollipops. He had a Sprite over there. He had ice cream at my parents. Like, and I don't like them having a whole bunch of sugar. So after the fact, he was like, can we go get ice cream? And I was like, well, first of all, I did spend a lot of money today. And second of all, you have had so much sugar today. And I could see how irritated he got with me, like as if I was lying to him. And I knew it was on the tip of his tongue to say. And so I just explained to him, the processing behind my thoughts. I was like, I didn't lie to you, but sometimes adults, everybody's entitled to change their mind. And after seeing the amount of sugar that you had today, I changed my mind, right? But I had like healthy cookies at home that were made out of like bananas as the sugar. And so I was like, when we get home, you can have one of those and we can watch a show and whatever. So I really try and explain things to them, specifically knowing that my son has this energy. But that's kind of the energy of Scorpio. Like once they think that you've lied to them, there is a different energy, right? Then they will remember that, right? They will work around that. They will get frustrated. They will not trust. It will take a lot for a Scorpio to trust you after you've broken the trust. So that's sort of like that energy of the moon in there. And then again, that gate 21, which is, and Mercury moving into Scorpio, right? This just intensifies our mind. This is bringing our mind onto the things of the occult, the taboo, the things that we're not supposed to talk about, sex, right? Sex, drugs, rock and roll, all those sorts of things. It's bringing a depth to our mind. And remember, we talked about Mercury a few episodes back. I don't remember when it was, but Mercury actually, Mercury is associated with Gemini, Mercury is associated with Virgo, and it's kind of like the trickster, play, light, flirty sort of energy. But Mercury holds a lot of depth because Mercury can go deep down into the underworld. And so when we look at that, Mercury holds depth and Scorpio is going to bring it to those depths, right? Because Scorpio is the underworld, right? It's Hades, it's Pluto, it is that archetype in there. It's all that dark stuff. And so kind of, with Mercury being there, that's where the mind is going to be for the next however long Mercury is in Scorpio. I have it down here somewhere where it moves into Sagittarius on the 29th. And so again, that full moon, that's what Mars is doing. Mercury is actually the esoteric ruler of Aries, which is interesting. And with the moon being in Aries, so bringing up Mercury felt important, knowing that. So this is also happening again in gate 21. Gate 21 is the gate of control. The shadow is of control. The gift is of, oh my gosh, authenticity, authority. Sorry, the gift is of authority. The city is valor. So valor means great courage in the face of danger, right? So life is going to test you, and the balance, the challenge, the offering with gate 21 is to release control while staying in your own authority, right? The gift of your authority comes when you give up control and you come inside of yourself, giving up control of the external, right? Like we talked about in the very beginning of this episode, you cannot control a whole lot in life. And when you're trying to like so tightly grab onto things, and think about your children, right? If you're a parent, if you are so authoritarian, whatever the word I'm looking for, authoritarian, is that the word I'm looking for? When you're so disciplined with them, when they can't do anything, right? Authoritarian. There's a word I'm looking for. And anyway, besides the point, when you have too much discipline, your kids rebel. But then when you don't have any discipline, then they also go the opposite direction. So it's finding that balance of discipline, control, and then surrender and letting them be. Like your kids are their own unique human beings, and there's an energy of leadership held within gate 21, and it's like it's trusting that, think about your kids, like I will help you and guide you and set values for you and hopefully instill like all these things, and also understand that I cannot control you. So I have to hope that I've instilled the right values and I'm here as a support and a guide. And then when you go on and do your own thing, you'll make the right choices. But like at some point as a parent, you have to let it go. You cannot control your kids, right? That's just not the way that it works. So that's sort of the energy of this full moon. And we'll definitely get more into it the week of, or actually no, because it's happening on Monday. But if you join the Inner Mother Collective, we have our full moon circle on Saturday. That's going to be happening. And of course, check the Substack because I will have a post out for that. On the 7th, Mercury in Scorpio is square Pluto. So this is intensity of the mind, right? Ego death of the mind, darkness and depth. That, again, that control, because Pluto comes into play here. And so we might have our mind focused on this sense of wanting or seeking or needing to control things. So we're really going to have to like tap into that surrender piece with these transits. On the 7th, Venus is opposite Saturn. Now, Venus is pleasure, Venus is values, Venus is beauty, aesthetics, material. Saturn is restriction. Saturn is boundaries, right? So are you losing your pleasure to material things, right? Venus is, again, it's about pleasure, what you find pleasurable. Saturn is practical, traditional, and it also holds a lot of boundaries. And so even with this being in Pisces, right? Again, sort of back to that question that we had earlier with Venus opposite the North Node in Pisces. It is like, are you losing yourself to the pleasure, right? So Saturn can actually be supportive here, because if we're losing ourselves to that, the pleasure of escapist, of sex, of alcohol, whatever it is, to the extreme, Saturn is coming in and reeling it back a little bit and being like, hey, let's come back here. Let's implement some control, not control. What's the word I'm looking for? Discipline, self-discipline, right? Because Saturn is discipline. Let's get practical, realistic, and sort of like rein it in a little bit. So of course there's a duality in everything, but that could be part of the energy here. On the 13th, Venus moves into Libra. It's opposite Neptune, and then Pluto stations direct. So Pluto has been retrograde. Venus moving into Libra, Venus rules Libra. So now we're focusing on our relationships as mirrors, right? What are we seeing reflected back to us? And what does that reflect about ourselves? Because Venus is values, and we find what we value in the mirror that is reflected in the relationships that we choose, right? So whatever relationship that you're feeling triggered or whatever, or even the relationships that you're so happy and you're in love, like it's reflecting something back to you, and you will see the things that you value based on the relationships that you choose to surround yourself with and in. So that is the big theme of Venus in Libra. Now, opposite to Neptune, this is dreamy. This is, again, that escapist stuff. This is a little delusional. You're off in the clouds, kind of like hopeless romantic sort of energy. Although Venus in Libra is a little bit more refined than Venus in Taurus, which is a little bit more that like wild woman archetype. At least like that's what I sort of associate with Venus in Taurus. Venus in Taurus to me is really more that like Aphrodite type of energy. But when we think about that, I think of the sculptor or the sculptor, oh my gosh, why are words escaping me right now? The sculptor, you know what I'm talking about, the thing of Aphrodite with like there's no arms. Oh my gosh, it's driving me crazy right now. But anyway, it's not a painting. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. That archetype, the thing that has Aphrodite, the actual art piece to it, that's Libra, right? The aesthetic, the beauty, the art, the creation of is Libra, but the actual energy of that sort of like wild, pleasurable, like the woman in like the flowy clothes and like being really sensuous, and that's Taurus, right? So that's kind of the difference there. And then Pluto stationing direct. Pluto, so I would have to look. I don't actually know if it's out of bounds now, but Pluto is doing this like out of bounds things, which really just means Pluto is not acting traditional according to Pluto. But Pluto is going direct in Aquarius now. So we're now, we're in Pluto and Aquarius. We were kind of dipping back and forth, but we're now in Pluto and Aquarius. So now it's going to be moving forward. And it's still in this little minor triangle with Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus. And so, and as things are entering Aquarius, as things are entering Scorpio, rather fixed signs, in Libra, we're going to be in this little, so when Venus is now in Libra, Venus is going to be aspecting all these little, this little minor triangle. On the 14th, that's exactly what it said. Venus enters a little minor triangle, right? With Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune. So Venus is going to be trying to Uranus and Pluto and opposite to Neptune, right? We just had that opposition. And so the trine is really supportive, right? So Uranus and Pluto, Venus in trine to Pluto, it's always, Venus in any aspect of Pluto is bringing in intensity. It's like obsessive love, it's passion, it's pleasure, but it's like the pleasure passion is the word I'm looking for, right? Where it's just like we're being absorbed, like consumed with the pleasure of things. Like when I read my little fantasy books, like I'm so sucked into the passion of that and I feel it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's what I want. But also like knowing that that's not healthy. So that's sort of like that energy and the themes that can come up with that, right? Uranus again is shock, it's truth, it's the great awakener. So we're being asked to see something that maybe we didn't see before, specifically when it comes to our relationships and our values, with Venus being involved. On the 20th, Mercury is conjunct Mars in Scorpio. This is combining our thoughts and our actions. So again, like being really aware of what you're saying, taking that pause before the frustration just comes out, because that's like the energy of Mars, is that masculine energy, but it's the action piece. It's like, I know what I want and this is what I'm going to do to get it. And then bringing Mercury in there. Mercury is our mind. Mercury is our words. Mercury is communication. Mercury is a little bit trickster. So when we talk about like, it's the thief. So when we talk about Scorpio, that's a little bit more manipulative. Now we're bringing in our mind that's a little bit sneaky and sly to like appease or to serve the Scorpio energy. So just being aware of that, like what are you acting on that might be perceived as deceptive, possibly, and just sort of like just noticing if anything comes up with that. On the 21st, Mercury enters its shadow phase on the 21st. And then we have our new moon in Libra, which is happening at 7:25 a.m. At 28 degrees of Libra in gate 50. It is opposite Chiron, square Jupiter, and it's an out of sign square to Pluto. So this is kind of like some pressure here because squares and oppositions are challenging energy. Squares are more internal challenges. Oppositions are things that will come to you from outside. So we have to learn to balance. So like the moon and the sun opposite to Chiron, we're having to balance the ego and the soul, right? Like with this core wounding, that the wounding is typically going to be mirrored to us from somebody coming from the outside. Jupiter is going to be expanding this. Pluto is going to bring the intensity. So this one can be a little bit more intense. Gate 50 is the gate of values. And so again, just like, which is so Libra, right? Like, what do we value? Are we afraid of responsibility? Because gate 50 is in the spleen. So there's always an energy of fear with anything in the spleen, but like, are we afraid of responsibility? How are we showing up? What values are we putting out? What do we value? Like really all those sorts of questions are coming in, and we'll get more into this as it comes closer. And of course, Substack will always have something on there. Instagram, TikTok, I'll always be talking about all those places as well. On the 22nd, Neptune retrogrades back into Pisces and the sun moves into Scorpio. I don't know why. I like Scorpio traditionally has been a really intense season for me. But lately, I don't know. I'm just, as I was like doing this, I was like, I got really excited. Like the sun in Scorpio, this is like Scorpio season is like when the thin is the veil is the thinnest the veil is the thinnest, right? You think about Halloween, Samhain. I'm probably mispronounced that. But the veil is thin. Right? This is testing us. This is bringing up darkness, occult, taboo, all the things we're not supposed to talk about, sex, drugs, rock and roll, like all those things. I have Jupiter and Pisces in my 8th house. So I'm so expanded by all of those things. It's like one of my favorite topics to talk about. And I need to bring it more to the podcast because I'm just like, I love it. I've had some episodes in here with like sex therapists and things like that. But anyway, so that's happening. The sun is moving into Scorpio. So that's going to be the theme of the next season. And Neptune, again, going back into Pisces. What has been coming up over the time that Neptune has been in Pisces, right? What are we leaving behind? What are we escaping? What escapist habits tendencies are we leading into? Where are we losing ourselves, right? Like, what are we taking into Aries? Because again, when Saturn and Neptune move back into Aries together, this is huge. And that's going to be happening in February, I believe. This is like kind of dark night of the soul energy, right? So we're going through this. Now we're kind of like, we moved into Aries with Neptune, which is action. It's like the spiritual warrior. Now we're kind of dipping back into Pisces where we're sort of like, can't see it again, right? We're back into this place where we're kind of like back in the womb. We can't quite see clearly anymore. So it's like, what are the things that are coming up? On the 24th, the sun is squared to Pluto. This is again, ego versus like that soul sort of, when we talk about Pluto and Mars as rulers of Scorpio, Mars is more that like ego anger, ego rage sort of, and Pluto is more like that soul underneath it, right? So the sun being represented by the ego, right? It's the brightest thing in the sky. It is our core essence as well. And then Pluto, again, is bringing that intensity. It's bringing in the transformation, the alchemization, the healing, right? So yes, it's a square and it's challenging, but in every shadow, there holds a gift, right? So in every challenge, there holds a gift and a lesson and an opportunity for healing. So noticing what's coming up there. And then finally, on October 29th, Mercury enters Sagittarius, but remember it's in its shadow phase. So it's on November 9th, it's dipping back into Scorpio, or it's turning retrograde November 9th. And it'll go back to, I think it was about 20 degrees of Scorpio. And it's going to be opposite to Uranus in Gemini. And so this is challenging our mind. Again, what are we seeing differently? What are we perceiving differently? What is shifting in the way that we're viewing the world? Mercury rules Gemini. So this is oh my gosh, what is the term called? There's a term for it in astrology, and I'm blanking on it. But again, this is asking really big questions. So Mercury doesn't necessarily like to be in Sagittarius because it rules Gemini. It's more the fact finding, it's more the analytics. Whereas Sagittarius is like the big questions, the philosophical questions, the who am I? What am I here for? What is my purpose? That's sort of what this energy is revolving around. So we might have that with, again, this sort of like light, playful energy. And again, Mercury can go deep, but it doesn't necessarily like to be in Sagittarius. So what are you seeing, right? Like, what are the thoughts that are coming in? What are the big questions that are circling around? Maybe you know that you don't have to answer them right now and just sit with them. What are you being forced or shocked into seeing the truth of, right? With this opposition to Gemini or Uranus. And remember, oppositions tend to come to us from outside of us. So is someone coming and mirroring something back to you that maybe you don't want to see, or maybe you need to see, or maybe you need to question yourself? But that's the big transits. I mean, that's most of the transits for this month. I think I skipped a few of them, a few little ones, but that's the big energy of the month. I do have to run and pick up my kids now. Otherwise, I would probably keep going. But again, thank you so much for being here, for listening. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on TikTok, Substack, YouTube, all of the places, all of the ways are down in the show notes. I will speak to you again soon.